Hi, everybody. Again, Anthony Romeo here, WiseUP. Today, we welcome a guest all the way from Morristown, New Jersey, Luke Getto, Director of Product Management of Voltserver. So welcome. And I can't thank you enough. I've been talking to you for a while now, and I'm so glad that you're able to join us on WiseUP. WiseUp can be heard on iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, or however you stream your podcast. Folks, we've been doing this now for 3 seasons. Now, if you're somebody that's in facilities, in the ICT community, CWA, IBEW, you should listen to this episode with Luke Getto from Voltserver. What is Voltserver, right? So I can tell you it's digital electricity, podcast over, end of discussion. But we bring Luke out today because he's going to elaborate what is digital electricity and what's Voltserver bringing to the table to their customers. And so, Luke, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me on your show, Anthony.
Yeah, it's getting you out of bed and into the office, it's tough. So just like many of us working remotely has become a common practice. So it's good that we have these platforms that we're able to communicate with the masses out there that are interested to understand what's going on behind the walls, what's making it all work, what's saving a buck here and there. We all take for granted the use of these IoT devices, right? I know I do, multiple devices myself with children, streaming service, etc. So what is Voltserver doing with the digital electricity? What is that?
So digital electricity is a technology that we invented, we patented, and what we position it as is an alternative to AC and DC power, an advanced version of it. So where the value really lies is everybody knows AC power, right? It's plug in your wall, you plug in your toaster, your TV, your computer, pretty ubiquitous, right? And then, a new technology that's come out, and been pretty powerful is power over Ethernet. Well, AC power, not safe. If you stick a fork in it, you're going to get cooked. If you cut the cable, you can trip over the wires, those kind of things. It's dangerous. It's a high power level, but it can go far, long distances. Power over Ethernet, it's much safer. It's designed to be safe, this class 2 wiring. So if you unplug it, you grab that cable, you're not going to get electrocuted. But that limits the distance and the power capabilities. So you can power low power IoT devices, but you couldn't power, a refrigerator or something like that. So where we fall is right in the middle of that. We provide a significant amount of power over significant distance in a safe manner using the class 2 wiring.
Wow. So there's Tesla, there's Edison, and now we're talking about Eaves and Lowe, right? So people are going to know these names, the founders, Stephen Eaves and Dan Lowe. That's terrific. I mean, what you're saying thus far. What got you to this position in the first place? What gets you out of bed other than to talk to me at Voltserver? What excites you other than electricity, right? So. The year 2020 was pretty interesting for me. Wild ride, as I'm sure it was for many people. And something was going on.
You might have heard of it. I think there was something in the news. So I had a good steady job. I decided I was going to leave that steady job at the end of March, at the peak of the pandemic, for a new opportunity that I thought was exciting and was a new chapter for me. Unfortunately, the owner of the company, the company itself, it just didn't turn out to be where I wanted to be. It was a bit unsafe, without the masks and we're everybody in a small confined space. So I ended up leaving that company. I was unemployed for a little bit, but I landed fortunately on my feet at Voltserver, and I've really enjoyed working here. It's a really passionate team. We're pretty much, we've been in business, five years or so, and everyone's kind of got this startup mentality. Everyone's, on the same page, really excited, really friendly, and wants to work towards this goal of kind of changing the world.
Yeah, no, it sounds, I mean, everything that we've been talking about thus far with Luke Getto from Voltserver about digital electricity, it sounds like a wild ride that you're, going to set a course out here, because you're talking about 100+ year behemoth to go up against, right? AC power. This is something that people have been, tried and true forever. So, now you're going to re-educate them and highlight, Voltserver and digital electricity on the benefit, the key benefits of, is it just lower to install, lower to run? Is it, safer, as you pointed out, or is it a collective of each? What's driving it? Is it have something to do with IoT, or what's one of the drivers that for your company?
Yes. So I think, all these intelligent use cases, IoT, wireless, whether it's Wi-Fi, whether it's commercial 4G, 5G, that's all great. But everything needs power, right? Everything has to be powered. And so, while we have this, this phrase fiber to the X, right? We're fiber to the everything, we're going to get massive amounts of data, and, everything's going to be connected. Well, how is it going to be powered, right? And that can sometimes be an afterthought, right? You have a large building where you're talking about installing access points, cameras, 5G millimeter wave radios. You're going to connect, maybe you have the excess fiber to upgrade all that infrastructure. That's great. But how are you going to power it? Do you need to call, an electrician to come in and run new circuits, run dedicated circuits? If you're doing something like, commercial wireless, you can't just plug that into the wall. I mean, one primary reason is there doesn't usually happen to be an outlet where it's convenient to put an antenna, right? The other is, you don't want to lose that connectivity to your cell phone during a power outage. You want your tenants and your employees to be able to call, 911 in an emergency. So you need to have that backed up. Security cameras, these business critical applications, you don't want to lose during a power outage. And also, to add all this AC infrastructure to an existing building can be very expensive with core drilling, conduit, and the trades, to come and install it.
Yeah. So you point out a lot of great things, such as the wireless, PoE, the flexibility, security, etc. So basically, with the digital electricity, there is a transmitter, am I understanding correctly? And does that sit, standalone? Does that go into your IT closet? Does that go into a separate room? Is it in some type of special enclosure? How does that get installed?
So there are two bookends to our technology, right? So you have a transmitter, which sits in your head end, in your MDF closet, which is, going to be a controlled environment. That's when you're going to have your server racks, for your data center, for your building, things like that. Going to be maintained, at a constant temperature. So everything has peak functionality. Then we convert your traditional AC power or your DC power into digital electricity at the transmitter. It's transmitted over low voltage cabling, so that class 2 wiring can be run in the same raceways, same conduit pathways as your fiber, your Ethernet, things like that. And then we have a receiver on the other end, and that receiver converts digital electricity back into either AC power or DC power. So now you can plug in your devices, whether that's a radio, a PoE switch, or so forth. So we contain that, and the benefit is then you're now running a cable that supports up to 2 kilowatts of power, just like you would Ethernet cable. You can have your IT staff run it if you need to. So your installation modification significantly reduces your cost in that respect.
Wow. Hey, that's summarized in a nutshell, right? But so, and I know you brought up a couple of times already the wireless application. Um, with the wireless, on the move. I mean, everybody that I speak to or you speak to utilizes and runs their business, if you will, through the use of a mobile phone, right? Um, a lot of these companies that I've been talking to, the building developers and whatnot, they're very conscious of good coverage in these buildings. And so there's a cost associated on good coverage, right? So you have distributed antenna systems out there that you're working with companies out there to provide power over the fiber or copper. How does that work?
Yeah, so it's still, done over the copper, but we can use hybrid fiber, where you run
Oh, cool.
copper and
Yeah.
fiber in the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
cable. There's also low voltage, multi-conductor cabling that can be used. So yeah, it's familiar cable that I think you and your customers would be very familiar with and comfortable working with.
Yeah, no, we deal, as I mentioned to you earlier, as a distributor of layer one infrastructure since 1975. We deal with the CWA, the IBEW, the non-union, the two bobs in the truck, as I refer to them, with just quality solutions. Many of the manufacturers we work with, some of them in business hundreds of years, so they have evolved in supporting the layer one infrastructure with twisted pair cable. And, you fall right into that mix. I mean, a lot of the people that we're talking to and working with the day in, day out, they could definitely benefit from this. And again, folks, we're talking with Luke Getto, product development manager at Voltserver. This episode is going to be aired on iTunes and every way that you stream. Please continue to listen. Luke, other than the wireless and the intelligent building, and if you go to your website, and that could be found at voltserver.com, if you do check out the website, it has 3 areas for solutions. And one of those areas that we didn't bring up is indoor agriculture. Elaborate on that a little bit.
So indoor agriculture, we've gotten into this space in the past year or two. And what we found is, indoor agriculture requires a ton of power. If you think about it conceptually, you have to replicate the sun to grow these plants in building, right? So right. That energy, that these plants need to grow has to come from somewhere. And if you think about installing these lights using traditional AC power, can be very expensive. And then if you want to be able to move these, plots around, reconfigure, grow different, plants, different types of plants, that's kind of the value we provide. Is we're using our digital electricity to direct power these LED lights. So we're actually taking the transformer, the driver, out of the LED light, moving it out of the grow room, which is one of the highest failing components. And then we're providing our high power to these lights. And we can drive a tremendous amount of energy to these lights and have a power per plot, a light per plot that's vastly above most of the LED fixtures out there, wow. still capitalizing on the LED efficiency.
Oh, that's terrific. I mean, it's no surprise to anybody that's listening to this show that, marijuana distilleries are becoming more abundant across the country as marijuana continues to legalize through a state near you. I'm sure it's going to be common practice. It's something that to what your company, Voltserver, is bringing to the table as a benefit versus a traditional AC power. So talk to us about some of your case studies, something that, has been highlighted in the news, whether it be schools, hotel. What do you got for us?
Yeah. So one of our, premier case studies, I think, is the Sinclair Hotel in Texas, which has gone kind of all digital. And I know a lot of your guests have spoken on that. And I think there's a ton of good and great information. We work with a lot of close partners that you've had on your show here. But I think one case that really hit home for me was we worked with the Westfield Public School District in New Jersey. It's 10 different schools, and we came in and we were working with them, and they were saying, look, we're going to convert everything over to this intelligent building. Everything's going to be PoE because we want everything to be connected, whether that's the PA system, the clocks, the Wi-Fi, cameras, door entry, security systems. And they said, all right, well, we're going to move everything over to PoE. We're going to power it all from a switch that comes from our IT closet, right? The problem is, like I mentioned before, what happens during a power outage? You can't lose your access controls. You can't lose your security cameras. You need that, we call it business critical, but it's also safety critical, so it's critical for the school to have these functions running. And they found that, well, what were their options? They could install these local UPS, uninterruptible power supplies in every IT closet, but that could get very expensive over time because these IT closets, I mean, we're talking about a school district, right? They're not well controlled in terms of air conditioning, so they're going to be very hot, which decreases battery life. So what we worked with them was to centralize all of the UPS into their data center, which was environmentally controlled, kept at a steady, good temperature, that these batteries have an extended battery life. And now they can use a very large UPS. So we're talking about the same kind of trend that many industries have gone to, from a decentralized to a centralized architecture. So now their backup power is coming from one location, and it can power all of these switches using our digital electricity. And during a power outage, it switches over to the UPS, and then a generator warms up, it kicks up, and then that takes over. So now they can last for days and days, on this backup, utilizing our technology.
Oh, that sounds terrific. I mean, so as far as the standards go, when somebody comes to inquire about an opportunity to possibly utilize your solution, walk us through the steps. One of the contractors or building owners that we deal with sees what you're doing and says, that's something that I'd like to consider. What do? They just provide you the drawings and you take it from there?
Yes. So we try to work very closely with all our customers and our partners because digital electricity is new. There's not a simulation program out there on the market that allows you to design it, something like IBWave or things like that. So we work very closely in a consultative manner with any potential customer or partner, that we'll look holistically at their building, their opportunity, and say, what are you trying to power? Where is it? How far away from an IT closet or the MDF or head end, things like that. And then we can recommend a certain infrastructure, and we can give them, a full design with wiring, equipment, bill of materials, and all that kind of stuff. And we can say, look, here's the design for you. We don't charge for that design. It's a value-added service. And then
I missed that. You said what? What did you say? You don't charge? Is that what you said? You don't charge. Wow.
Don't charge that. So we'll take a look at these buildings, and we look at lots of ones, and because we're confident that when you look at our solution and you compare it to the other options that are out there, that many of these opportunities are going to go our way. We find that the way we do business, we the proof is in the pudding, right?
Yeah.
We come there and we say, look, here is the cost and how you're going to install this. And, you go look at the alternatives and tell us, if we're competitive and appealing. And most of the time they come back and that's the case.
It works. Yeah. No, I mean, it seems like you got the right process gone, down pat. One, don't charge, the customer on the design phase, because they're going to pay for the product solution and they're going to benefit from the product solution. It's not like you're selling them a lemon, you're selling them, a Rolls Royce here. Now, where do you see your company as far as, I know each project is different. You have arenas, you have hotels and schools, as you pointed out. But as far as a comparison, cost comparison, where is your company versus traditional in the delta traditionally. You know, it's very, I know it's all over the map because of project specifics, but do you tend to see yourself higher, lower, or in between, right in the sweet spot?
I think, you know, if we narrow it down a little bit, I mean, you know, in a small application only powering a few devices, we may not be cost competitive.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about these large, you know, large buildings, you know, in cities or sprawling, you know, warehouses,
Right.
arenas, like you said, airports, you know, large infrastructure, where there's going to be many devices connected, and, you know, especially in buildings that already exist, you know,
Right.
we find that we can be anywhere from 15 to 30% less expensive when you look at the total cost, because, you know, instead of,
and that's not even, and excuse me, I'm just pointing out to folks listening, you know, and that's not even considering the CapEx. You're just talking about, I mean, you're talking about the CapEx. You're not even referring to the OPEX. You know,
no, I think I guess it depends, right? If you're bringing in, you know, the OPEX, yes, you're right. The CapEx is the initial investment to get that infrastructure built out. So that is the savings there. In the long run, you know, we really value the fact that we can be operationally, you know, less expensive. As I mentioned, you know, the flexibility. If you need to move something, you know, you can just have.
And that's what I was pointing out.
Move, right?
Yeah, so that's what I was pointing out. You were just referring to the CapEx of 15% difference, and now, you know, because everything that you've been saying is clearly identifying the benefits of operational expenditures, reducing them. And there's a lot of things going on. There's over 10 states in the United States today alone that are all focused on lowering their emissions. And, you know, in New York, where I'm at, they have local law 97 that was put into effect in 2019. And that's saying that by 2030, you have to reduce emissions by 40% in any building that's over 25,000 square feet. Now, if you look outside your window in New York City, there's a lot of buildings that fall into that category. So how do you do that? How do you manage all these devices? How do you reduce power to these devices? So a lot of companies that are out there are, you know, the one widget, but each and every one of them require power, right? So those widgets require power, and you're saying, well, I'm going to bring digital electricity to those devices, which would drastically reduce the power consumption.
I think where we really, you know, add to that benefit, you know, from a green environmental perspective is the way we can interface with something like a DC microgrid. So microgrids are, you know, becoming kind of a hot topic around the country, you know, for energy resiliency. Also just, you know, greenify everything, is that every time you convert from DC to AC and AC to DC, you're losing a percentage of efficiency, right? So in the end, pretty much every device, you know, in a building is DC powered. There just happens to be an AC DC converter inside them. So if you can connect up to a DC microgrid, that energy is then, you know, generated by solar panels, by wind, and then you can distribute that energy via digital electricity and then via DC to all these devices. You've cut down several areas of conversion, which have now saved you, you know, that energy.
Oh, it's terrific. It's such a mouthful. And folks, those of you listening, we will put in the show notes case studies and additional information where you can learn more about Voltserver, what they're doing with the digital electricity trend in intelligent buildings, wireless, and agricultural, so that you need to find out more about it. Again, Voltserver can be found on the web at voltserver.com. I would also encourage you to reach out to Luke Getto via LinkedIn. You know, he could be easily approached there. Actually, that's how I connected with you initially, right? I saw that you had your Tough Mudder picture in the LinkedIn. I said, hey, I did a couple of Tough Mudders and cried along the finish line. So I could have a common bond, right? So, no, Luke, it's been great chatting with you today. And again, when we point out, you know, this is something new, you want to deal with quality solutions out there. You want to deal with reputable business partners. If you have to question those you listening, if you have questions and you want to inquire more details about that, feel free to reach out to me, Anthony Romeo at wisecomponents.com, and I'll put you in touch with Luke gladly. And for my listeners that are out there on WiseUP, we'd love to do more business with quality brands such as Voltserver. As a provider of layer one infrastructure, I think that we could make it happen, right? So, Luke, without further ado, I say farewell and thank you from all of us at WiseUP. And folks out there, again, this could be streamed on iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, or however you stream. Be sure to check us out on our LinkedIn and our other social media pages at wisecomponents.com. Feel free to leave your comments, only good ones, because I'm very sensitive type and I don't want my feelings hurt. If you don't like us, tough. But because we're going to keep coming, we have future shows out there coming up with more people, intelligent guests like Luke Getto, because I'm not that intelligent, so I have to talk to intelligent people. So, Luke, thank you again for joining our show today.
Thank you very much, Anthony, and to you and your listeners, stay healthy, stay well.
Thanks.